Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's going to continue to be fine. And what we're going to do together, which is going to feel really familiar for folks who joined us early, is we're going to be working on the tribute page. Yeah. This is one of the final projects to get your certification. If you haven't looked at this yet, that's fine. This is week 2. We're previewing this way in the future, way in advance. Everything's fine. We've already met, but Ramon, who are you?
Hey, everybody.
Rude.
No, not at all. My name's Ramon. Hi, everybody. I'm chilling around this bootcamp as a mentor. And Jess was very kind to invite me here to sort of work on this tribute page together and hang out. If y'all ever have any questions, I'm hanging out at the bootcamp. I'm happy to answer any questions you have and help learn with y'all, because this is an extraordinary learning experience.
Ramon is such a sweetheart, and he's really modest about this, but he speaks more languages than anyone I know. So if you have any questions during the session or on the forum in Spanish or in German, you're super welcome to. You're never going to bother Ramon, I don't think.
Never.
For me, myself, I will be able to answer your questions in English sometimes, because I'm both terrible at English and computers.
That's not true.
We're going to be
you
coming
are wonderful.
Don't. We're going to be talking about the tribute page. And one thing we're going to do, and I really want to flag this early and often, is we are not doing when the instructions said. So the instructions say go to codepen.io, right?
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that. So if you copy us exactly, you will not pass this test. Like we're previewing some concepts from the real world that are not going to help you. So should we go to Codepen first and see? So when you do this assignment yourself, you must go to Codepen to do this. But we're showing you the wrong right way to do this, because we want to preview some concepts like, what is GitHub? What's version control? Yeah. What is a text editor? How do these files work? But I just want to yell. And really, if you do this in a text editor and then you need to put it in Codepen, it won't ruin your day. I think moving it over will be relatively trivial. But I just want to stress, we're showing you the wrong way to do this. Don't trust us.
Shall we take a quick glance at what Codepen is?
Yeah, I think that sounds really chill.
Yeah. So this is a platform here that lives on the internet, where folks can put up their projects just to show to the world in a sandboxed environment.
What's a sandbox?
Yeah, a sandbox is kind of like a closed off space where these pieces of code live and run, where folks can just try stuff out. For example, is it fine if I go ahead and check one of these out?
I don't think any of them are going to be terribly scandalous.
No.
While you pick one, I think sandboxes are really exciting because they sort of abstract away some of the complexity of doing real world projects. So free Codecamp, what we're in now, what we're studying in, free Codecamp is a sandbox. You're not dealing with version control. You're not doing files. It just sort of magic, does it all for you. And Codepen does the same thing. And so when we see this HTML, the CSS, and these JavaScript, these on a real world project would be separate files. And here they're represented by separate windows.
I like that. Yeah, that I think that covers it very well. By the way, folks, if the size on my window ever needs being made bigger, please just give us a shout and I'll happily do that.
Yell at us about anything.
Absolutely. So as Jess very, very well said, we've got our HTML, we've got our CSS and our JavaScript living on these separate files. And down here, just gonna make that a little bit larger by dragging, we've got the project preview running, kind of like we had in free Codecamp side by side. Here it's living at the bottom and we can try it out. And look at how fancy.
That's very fancy. And this seems to work on different size. When you resize the screen, it still works.
Yeah.
That would make it
responsive. Sorry, folks, like I get too excited. Like, please feel free to cut in as well and shout out the answer.
So this is really cool. So this is what you're going to be doing your projects in for your final projects. And to make the final projects as scary as possible, we're going to we're going to preview some of them in these Saturday sessions, and we're going to be helping out in the forums and all, but these are ones you're going to be doing on your own. They're individual projects.
Fabio here asks a very interesting question. Can we just copy things in these other projects, and are they free to use?
So it depends. It's the same way you don't want to just copy, like hot link to images or copy images. It could be a little rude. You don't want to just copy these projects. You can fork them. You can like make your own copy and you can experiment, but you want to make sure you don't just copy everybody's stuff. It can be really rude. Later on, we can learn a little bit about licenses. And in the same way, there's a post on the forum about Creative Commons that I think is really useful. And they talk a little bit about licenses for graphics. Hey, these are graphics that people said, oh, okay, I'm giving you permission to use them. There's licenses for code as well to say, hey, I'm going to give you a lot of permission to use it or a little specific permission to use this. And like learning a little bit about licenses before you use it can be really helpful. Barrel's asking, hey, does sandbox mean like it's really for practice? And I think that's fair. Like when you think about playing in a sandbox, it's safe, nothing dangerous is going to happen. It's kind of the same. Oh, I'm going to face mute for a second and sneeze and be weird. Sorry.
All good. Bless you, Jess. So we'll be working on this free Codecamp project in this Codepen sandbox normally, but today we're gonna, as Jess said, we're gonna be covering that in a more of a real world context. So if we go back to our project real quick.
We're gonna have some to-dos, aren't we?
Oh, we're gonna have plenty of them.
You're too nice.
So our objective today will be to build an app that is functionally similar to this. And they've given us sort of like a goal to work towards.
So if we example?
Oh. Yeah, I've got it open right here.
And I should say, I don't think we're going to finish this today.
Yeah, we're going to sort of lay the groundwork so that everybody can start working on that. And if y'all like, we can come back and do this again. I'm sure Jess would be happy to have me again, maybe.
Of course. I love to eat up your weekends. Like who wants to go outside or see your family or go look at all these beautiful people where we're just taking up their whole weekend? We're terrible. We're monsters.
So what we see here is this finished website. We've got a title, we've got a subtitle, we've got an image. These are things we've covered in the bootcamp already. A caption for that image, a timeline. Oh,
we haven't done captions yet, though. We're gonna have to. Right. We can just look that up on an MDN.
Absolutely, fair point. Yeah, and so let's have a look down here. We'll have a quote. Ooh, we'll be doing a quote, and if you have time, you should read more about this incredibly human being on his Wikipedia entry. This looks like a link, and it is indeed a link. So we'll be building this website for this project. And if we take a look here, what Free Codecamp has done is divided this up into a series of what are called user stories. We've actually got a definition here for what a user story is. But I'll go ahead and, if I may, and sort of offer a bird's eye view definition of what I consider to be a user story. And what I kind of like to think of them as are sort of what I like about the term story is that it tells a story about what we expect to happen when the user interacts with this website. So for example, here, user story number 1, my tribute page should have an element with a corresponding ID main, which contains all other elements. So, and this is something we've covered before, and I believe we also heard from the lovely Mr. Lawson, hearing about what the purpose is about having this main element. And I'd love to open up the question if anybody would like to tell us a little bit why it's such a good idea to have a main element. Maybe not for us as day-to-day users, but for other folks interacting with the web. why does it make sense to have this main element? And again, this can be.
The main.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
The main element, it is a way to define that it is like the most important part of the web page. And we use it, or we name it like that, because that's a rule based on semantic HTML. And it's a better way to code, because when I'd say that before too.
All fine.
Okay. Well, it is a better practice, because when another developer is going to read your code, it's going to be easier.
No stress. Yeah.
We've got a bunch of folks in the chats as well saying, oh yeah, accessibility and yes for search engine optimization and accessibility. Look at Tanya just out here like, I got all the answers. And we heard from Ola saying like, well, this is really semantic HTML. We're setting the expectation that the main content is being wrapped up in this.
And I don't know if y'all have tried this or if we've covered this, but this also works really great as Mr. Lawson showed us with, with the Apple Watch and how that works. And even on our browser, we've got a built-in a reader mode that also extracts this main information. I can go ahead and try it out here. Check it out. So it took out all of that main information from the website and put it in a way that I can just in a sort of like, here, I'll make it a little bit bigger. Sorry about that. That it put it in like a straightforward way, like strip away all their information, all of the JavaScript, all of the CSS, and really stick with the text, which is what we want here. And certainly a lot of things like blog readers and these kinds of apps do use this information to get that from a blog post. So yeah.
So we've got a question right here saying, what's the difference between main and body? And I think this is such a good question. Sorry, I've just been petting cats all day and I'm allergic to everything.
Oh no.
Although I still recommend petting cats all day. Oh gosh, body is, so we've got the header, which is the stuff that like you'll see this black bar that says free Codecamp. But main sits inside of body. So body is sort of a subset. Main is a subset of body.
Yeah.
They're both really important, but main's sort of more to let us know you can have boring stuff in body, and main's like, oh, here's the important stuff that you want.
I like that. I think, and to add to what Jess said, the body can contain things that aren't the immediate thing you're coming to the website for. For example, the header, or even if I scroll all the way down, okay, Free Codecamp doesn't have a footer, but there you would find things like the footer, a contact link, some logos, this sort of thing, which aren't essential content to what we came to this website to look for. So that's kind of the difference between the two. So if I may, I'll go ahead and continue going through the other user stories. Number 2 we see here is, I should see an element with a corresponding ID title, which contains a string, i.e. text, that describes the subject of the tribute page, e.g. Dr. Norman, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce this, I think, Borlaug? Yeah. So we've got here our second, and then let's move on to our third user story. I should see a div element with a corresponding ID, Img div. Ooh.
And all of these IDs are going to feel a little bit weird. We're like, why am I making an ID that says? We're making these IDs really so that the automatic tester knows what the deal is.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't use these IDs if you were making this page just for fun. And somebody was asking a really good question and I missed it. They were saying, oh, hey. They didn't say, hey. They were very polite. And I think it's not impolite. And it's like, well, you know what? The tribute page, do we have to just do them for people, or can we do them like a tribute to a topic or a tribute to an animal? Can we do a tribute to an animal
today?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I'm very happy. as long as you meet these user stories, it will pass. So I think you're probably going to want to use these projects in your portfolios when you start looking for work. So probably don't make them about something very rude, but we can do whatever we want. I was going to say there's no cops on the internet. There's tons of cops on the internet, but there are no learning cops on the internet for us right now. We can do whatever we want so long as we pass these requirements.
Totally. We should start, like, maybe as we go through these, maybe let's keep in the back of our minds what animal we could do.
Oh gosh, folks, yell at us in the chat. What kind of animal would you like? I know exactly which one I want. So if nobody picks them, I'm gonna pick like a big old lumpy sofa of an animal. Oh, we got panda. The red ones or the big chubby babies?
Let's see.
Just continue to yell animals and we'll continue to stick with these.
Sounds good. So let's see. User story number 4. Within the Img div element, I should see an Img element with a corresponding ID image.
We're going to make an image, and it's going to have the ID of image.
Perfect.
All right.
So user story number 5. Within the Img div element, I should see an element with a corresponding ID Img caption that contains textual content describing the image shown in Img div. I do like capybaras.
For folks watching the recordings, there's like lovely, lovely people adding really esoteric suggestions.
Let's see, user story number 6. I should see an element with a corresponding ID tribute info, which contains textual content describing the subject of the tribute page. And this is kind of sounding like a paragraph or a series of paragraphs. It's P element that we've covered previously in the course.
Right, because it's like, oh, a text element. I'm like, that feels like a paragraph. Yeah.
User story number 7, I should see an A element with a corresponding ID tribute link. Okay, we've seen these before, which links to an outside site that contains additional information about the subject of the tribute page. And this comes with a hint. You must give your element an attribute of target and set that target to blank in order for your link to open in a new tab, i.e. target equals _ blank.
Oh, so that's going to be required. We must.
We must. So coming up to the last 2 here, number 8, the Img element should responsively resize relative to the width of its parent element without exceeding its original size. And then our final user story, number 9, the Img element should be centered within its parent element. Now, these last 2 user stories seem to be pretty centered around usage of CSS, which we're still about getting started with. So we might not make it to these last 2, but we will we'll definitely get there. So let's scroll up to our first user story. And one thing I love about user stories, when I look at a series of to-dos like this, especially early in my career, I tended to get a little bit overwhelmed and think like, oh gosh, I have to do all of these and it's so much. But what's really helped me to sort of like really laser focus, what I like about these user stories is that they allow me to user focus on just one. I'm just going to make that element with a corresponding ID equals main. Contains all other elements? No, just have that have that element with the ID of main and really just focus on that for a start. Cool. So that's kind of like how we'll get started with where we'll get started as our first task. But before that, we're going to actually take a small moment to derail and go into creating a project for ourselves. Because as just mentioned, we won't be using Codepen today to do this. We want to dive a little bit into what version control is and and hosting our project online on GitHub. So
somebody's pointing out, like, theoretically, you could create a bunch of divs for this product and then just insert the IDs they ask for. Both of us are just like squaring up to be like, you could technically do that, but
you're not wrong.
I mean, but you're not right. We're like, you could technically, I'd be like, and usually I say technically correct is the best type of correct. But yeah, you could, But that's not going to be good semantic HTML, and you're a very good web developer. We're not going to do that.
Exactly. We've got our users in mind. So what we'll go ahead then and do is make a project for ourselves, make a project for ourselves and put it on GitHub. Now, a lot of you might have heard of GitHub before, maybe seen it in passing. Some of you might not. So this what we're going to do today is also go a little bit into what GitHub is and how we can use it as users. So I've got a tab here open on github.com. And I don't know, would somebody in the chat maybe like to tell us a little bit about what GitHub is to them?
Or if you've seen it before.
Or if
No
you've seen it
stress if
before.
you haven't.
Yeah, all good. We're all here to learn together.
It's a library.
Awesome. A library. I love that. I love like it's a library. Can I be a extremely mean? Can you tell me a little bit more? Like, I love that answer. And I just also, your voice is beautiful. And I'd love to bully you to chat some more.
Oh, Jesus. I see that as a library because they're like, you can visit these books and there is the documentation on how you can use that code if you want to branch that out or if you want to collaborate with the project. And I think it's awesome because there are all kinds of smaller projects, sometimes like a Python, very simple application or something very complex. You can now also see and participate. And most of the time you can use the code as well to your own projects. So it's kind of a big library, a stud group collaboration, something like this, along those lines.
That's a wonderful metaphor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you,
We're
Fabio.
going to replace me with Fabio. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to be like, all right, your job now. We're done. And I think we've got folks in here also saying, oh, it's a repo hosting site. And that's cool because it's like previewing the big concepts here. Earlier, I was saying it's like your own sort of public secret clubhouse for your code. And it can be really important when you start looking for jobs. It was scary. Or when you want to show off what you're working on, or when you just want to collaborate with other people.
We've got a hand up here on Zoom.
Oh gosh. Sorry, somebody had a question. Go ahead and chat to us, or go ahead and chuck it in the chat. It's really about what makes you most comfortable, my love.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, if I may, I don't want to put you on the spot, Fabio, but I would love to know if you perhaps know of any alternatives to GitHub, because there's a couple of options that it's, even though GitHub, and I could be wrong on this, is one of the biggest platforms for code hosting, I'm wondering, has anybody heard of any alternatives?
Yeah, I came across one recently, but I don't remember the name. It was kind of a similar name, Git something.
Dion's got it. Oh, and I'm so sorry. Your name is beautiful. I'm not sure.
That's Gitbucket.
GitLab.
Bitbucket, GitLab.
Yeah.
Y'all got it. And I will add that stuff like Bitbucket, that's true, and GitLab and GitHub are all based on the idea of Git. So a type of version control. And version control, Ramon.
Oh, no.
Because I don't know how to describe it. Ramon, what's version control?
Yeah, version control is
I'm gonna take a sip of water because I'm like, I don't know how to describe this.
I'm gonna probably butcher this. So if anybody has a better way of doing it, please do stop me. But I'll try my best. I like to think of version control as a collaborative tool and methodology for allowing several folks to work on a project at the same time by checking what the versions of this whole base of code is. When we make contributions to projects, be them public or not, we're sort of contributing between like chunks of changes. Like we'll provide a chunk of changes, be that a new file or deleting a file or modifying some lines in a file. And it kind of reminds me of my days when I was in school and I was collaborating on projects. We used to use a tool called Dropbox. which some of you might have heard of. And you could use Dropbox to share folders. And so what happened was that when lots of us were working on a file at the same time, what Dropbox would do was sort of copy the file and be like, this is the version from Ramon, and this is the version from Jess, and this is the version from Fabio, and this is the version from Olga. And so like what would happen, it was that it would create a bunch of versions of this file. And that's the keyword there, versions, and sort of not being able to merge them together. So what version control does is it's allowed us as software developers, as software builders, to sort of mesh these together in ways that are in a way that we can collaborate without getting in each other's way. That's the shortest I could make it.
I often like to think of version control as like time travel for your code that a bunch of people can use at the same time. So if I'm working on a project if I'm working on something in Free Codecamp's got its own version of version control. I'm saying version a lot. That's rubbish. Where can we look at a Free Codecamp challenge?
Oh, sure.
Lazy I am. I get somebody else to be like, Free Codecamp's got this thing where you could say, oh, hey, let's go back. Please delete. Please reset this code. And that's a type of version control to say, hey, I've really messed this up. So please take me back in time to before I mess this up. And version control is really similar because you could do some weird things. And you could say, hey, I've messed this up so much that it's broken. And when we've got say, hey, it's individuals and it's collaborations as well. Oh, cool. Tanya's, we've got somebody asking, hey, well, I mean, is it good for teams only or for individuals? For individuals, it's super useful because you could say, hey, I broke this. Let's look at all of the past versions of this code that I saved. And I want to go back to the last time this worked. And of course, you're going to be fantastic engineers and you're not going to mess things up terribly. But as somebody who could, it's okay to mess things up. And with version control, you could just say, oh, cool. I spent an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours and I messed this up pretty bad, but I've been saving it the whole time. I'm just going to go back in time to a version before stuff got weird. Yeah.
I love that. I also love to think of version control for myself as an individual to sort of keep a log of what I've been working on. And sort of just in case I come back to a project much later, I can sort of keep a document, use version control as a sort of documentation for what I've done, so that when I come back in 3 months and I've completely forgotten what I was doing in this project, I can use that to remind myself.
Well, let's go ahead and let's start a project because we're gonna go over some concepts. What you're saying is gonna make a lot more sense once we see what they look like. Because
Totally.
when you save, and it sounds weird because when you push changes, and I love this. I love the idea that we're gonna like push our code onto the internet. We're just gonna like shove it in the internet. And these concepts of pull and push, I think they feel a little bit backwards, but you can leave little notes every time you save your code.
Yeah.
And Ramon is a very good programmer. And you leave like really good, like, oh, well, I've updated this and me, when I save new pieces of code, it's always like fixed. No, really fix this time. Yeah, no, we're done. Oh, it's broken again. So you can either be like Ramon and do a really good job, or you can be like me and do a bad job and version control will still save you. Mostly, usually. You could still mess things up on Git. It's just much more exciting.
Yeah. There's so many ways to use it. And in fact, you might be surprised to hear, as we were doing when we got started today, that lots of people use version control and by extension GitHub to host their projects. One of them being one we've been using for a while now for doing everything in open source. And that one was Free Codecamp itself.
This is conceptually quite difficult, where it's like, hey, the website, Free Codecamp, that we've been using to learn on is itself an open source project. Would it be useful to go and look at their code for a second?
I'm totally up for it because I've got it right here.
Well, I just want to preview for everybody that this is going to look extremely super weird and really, really complex, because this is going to involve a lot of things that we haven't looked at yet. And a lot of things where we're not really going to look at. It's like Docker. What's a Docker? And this is the concept of abstraction again. So Docker is a tool that people use in development. It might be something that you need to learn later, but a lot of these things we're not going to do now. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's scary, but okay.
And what Free Code Camp here, for example, is this is where all of the tools that and the software that they've written to provide this wonderful platform is hosted, and all of the code lives here, and we can have a look at it. We can have a look at it whenever we like, and we'll see a list of code. We can see, for example, how folks can sponsor the project if they have the means to. We can see who's using Free Code Camp. We can see who's contributing. Free Code Camp has 4,297 people who have contributed to the Free Code Camp project.
Is one of them on this call?
At least two of them that I know of.
So you've contributed to this.
Yes, I've made we've made a very small contribution to their code base. Yeah, and we can see here what's called a documentation of the repository as well. A repository is also a thing, isn't it? A repository being the project itself, and I'm gonna probably be using these two terms interchangeably. If you'd like a definition, please do feel free to ask.
I want to stick with Fabio's metaphor
of
a library. And if we're thinking of a library, of GitHub being a library, we're gonna think of your individual space. We're gonna think of Ramon's space as sort of a series of shelves. This is your space in a library. And then these repos are really books. These are the blank books that you're going to fill out with your project. I hope this doesn't feel very weird as a metaphor, because Fabio had such a perfect one, and I'm just really running it into the ground here. So we've previewed this. Can we scroll up a little bit?
Sure.
One thing, I just want to really lightly preview this, where I just said, oh, a repository is like a book, but it's also like a folder. Oh no, it's like a big folder that sits on your shelf in the library. And this Free Code Camp folder has other folders inside it. So it's got a Husky folder. I don't know what Husky is. Let's ignore that. It's got an API server folder, and we'll learn what APIs are. We talked a little bit about servers, but they're just somebody else's computer. So these are folders that sit inside our parent folder. And we've talked about the concept of parent and child. So our Free Code Camp folders are big folder. And then we've got these other smaller folders inside. But then we've also got files. So we come down a little bit. We've got all these files that say, that have these little paper looking dudes. So we've got Docker ignore as a file. Can you just scroll down just a tiny bit?
Sure thing.
Yeah. And we've got all these complicated, these scary looking files. Tanya's got a fantastic question. I love this. So can anybody just change the code here? And yes and no. So let's preview that. Let's talk about this a little bit. What is a commit? We've got a lot of really good questions here.
Ooh, yeah.
So the first one I want to say is, can anyone change the code here? And yes. And the question is, if yes, won't the site break? So the way you change your code here is you say, hey, I want to make a change to this. And what you do is, can I get you to scroll all the way to the top, Ramon?
Oh yeah, sorry.
What you do is, there's this concept called a fork. And you say, Jess, all of these are weird. And what a fork really means is, hey, I like this project. I want to make changes to it. I want you to copy the entire project as it exists right now. And then I want to make changes to my version of this. Then when I've changed it, I'm going to send my changed version back up to the team and say, hey, I've changed this a little bit. Could you accept this? Do you want to accept this? And that gives them the opportunity to make a choice and say, hey, we're going to accept this. It's not going to break anything. A commit, Palak is making a really good question. What is commit? A commit is those saves. So every save you make on your own version of it is a commit. And if it's not too weird, let's go ahead and start our own repo, which is going to feel weird. And I really do want to stress that the stuff we're learning on GitHub is just a preview. You're not going to need to do this through any of your work through the free Codecamp curriculum. This is just to show how it works in the real world. There's a whole class for GitHub. GitHub wants to teach you.
Oh,
Let me find that. I'm rubbish.
I should have it here as well, I think.
I'll race you. So there's a whole class. And I'd really love some feedback. If you all are saying, well, you know, this stuff feels useful, we should be learning this in the bootcamp. Scream at me. Don't actually scream at me. Fuss at me. There we go. Fuss at me, and we'll see. We might not be able to get it in this time.
So I got it here.
Oh gosh, did you beat me?
I was just a touch faster.
Yeah.
But I cheated because I already had it here in my browser.
Yeah. So here's a whole course about GitHub. And if y'all are like, oh, you know, we think this is important, we can go ahead and add this as an optional module, either in future boot camps, or if we were able to come back and do JavaScript. But it's also something you could do on your own. It's not something you need to do to finish this module with us. But it might be something that you want to do on your own just to get these skills under your feet. This is all completely free. Everything's fine.
Awesome. Yeah. So with all that said, let's go ahead and create our own repository. Now, what you see here is I'm logged in with my account, and creating an account is totally free. So I'm logged in. I can see here, I've got a couple of repositories already, some private, some public. We'll cover that in a moment. But let's take a look at this button here for a new repository. So if I click on that, that'll take me to a page where I can go ahead and create my own, how would we define, kind of a cubby hole where all of my code will go for this very specific project. And the first thing this will need is a name. And a name will be an identifier, not necessarily the name that will be displayed on as the title of my project, but rather an ID for my project. Beryl makes a comparison here. Oh, sorry.
No, we were both rushing to praise them, where I was like, oh, this is perfect. A repository is like the big main folder for your project. You are absolutely right.
Totally.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so this will be, I like that, the name, like the main folder, and that'll be like the name of our folder, the name of the folder where our code will live. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a name. Like if you feel like there's a better name, I'm going to keep it short and punchy and to the point.
I'm going to put it out to these folks. So we're building our tribute page, or our tribute project. What would you call that main folder? What would you call the folder for that project?
I'd love to.
I'm just so mean about making other people, where I'm like, no, make them do it.
If anybody's got an idea, feel free to drop it in the chat. Somebody here suggests pineapple.
So we've got tribute cage free Poga. We got pineapple, which is deeply chaotic. Like, you've got to respect this level of no, get weird. Because like here, our guide from GitHub says great repository names are short and memorable. Need inspiration? Call it Crispy Guide. Where I'm like, all right, Crispy Guide is pretty weird. Pineapple, also decidedly weird. Here we've got tribute page free Codecamp, cake free.
I love that.
Like tribute page or tribute page free Codecamps, probably, because when you come back and look at these, it's probably gonna, I do love these deeply chaotic ones, and pineapple will live forever in my heart. But I think we're gonna go for the most human readable one.
I'll go ahead and go for tribute page free Codecamp then. Thank you very much for the suggestion.
And to increase the chaos, we're going to drop that in here. We're going to give you a link to this. You can poke this. What are you doing? What are you doing? We know about friendly. We know about what. Yeah. I mean, you know that IDs in HTML can't do spaces. I bet you actual money that you're going to need to use hyphens instead. That's as mean as I get.
Let's go ahead and drop those in.
Yeah. Well, and I love that very gentle, like, come on, you can't. So Ramon hasn't already used tribute page free Codecamp.
And it's available because I haven't made this project. Like both Jess and myself could both have repositories called tribute page free Codecamp, and it would be available in both cases because it's at the level of like for our users. Now next we'll need a description, and Deanna here has actually made a contribution already for one. Tribute page context is the topic covered in the tribute page.
A little bit sort of reductive, a little bit like the definition of the definition of the definition. Could we just say like, this is the first final project of the it's the first final project. I'm very lazy.
That's perfect. Next, we'll have the option of making this project public or private. Now that's a little bit scary. Do I want everybody to see my messy code?
I mean, for this you do, because we want to let the folks here.
Totally.
But this is going to feel really familiar for folks who are on social media. Do you want a public profile or a private one? Earlier when we were messing about, I tried to use the example of, it's like a Flickr account before having and earlier I was saying like, nobody's used Flickr in like 10 years. And it's more like 15, isn't it? Like,
it's been a while.
Flickr was a thing when I first moved out of the state. That's 20 years. Oh no. Sorry, y'all came to learn about GitHub and this tribute, not watch me have an existential crisis. And so we're going to make this public, but if you're shy, and it's okay to be shy, you can say, I want to write my code. Nobody needs to see it. You could create a public one, and that's super chill as well. It means that you can't work with other people unless you invite them.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Please.
No, sorry.
Here we've got 3 options, and a README file is like, hey, do you want to attach a sort of longer explanation to this? Is this a project where people need to know more about what's going on?
Yeah, this is where you can write a long description for your project. And I've actually opened this. GitHub is very helpfully.
We've got a really good question here. Say, hey, if you make a repository in private mode, and then if you're the owner and you share a link, can somebody see it? And it's not like Google Docs. So if you share a link to a private repo, it'll just say, this is private.
It'll say, exactly.
You have to explicitly invite individual people to be able to view it. So if you want people to be able to see it, public's probably your best choice. If you want just a couple people to be able to see it, you need to invite those specific people. It's a really good question.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think right for our README, which is going to be a long description for a project, GitHub is very carefully, helpfully put these links here to their documentation where we can see what these are. Sorry, I've been scrolling down a little bit here. So I'm just going to very carefully scroll up and see what we can see here is a README is a file, which we haven't really covered in this bootcamp so far yet, but and especially if you're more familiar with them from computers, a file is just a chunk of data where we can save these different types of data.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you, Jess.
We're sorry, just like get a face mute when I need to sneeze. I don't think we need a README for this one. Like we're yeah. So this would be a longer text file that we connect to this.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Yeah. Usually you'll see most projects will have a README, but as Jess very well said, we don't really need one here. Then next,
Ziggy's pointing out like, hey, you know what? This is more like a manual. This is like a how to use this or why this exists. And that's absolutely fantastic point.
I love that.
Like here it says, this is our final project. If there's this tribute, you've got the context. I feel chill.
I love that.
Don't ignore. I'm going to be really mean and just completely abstract this way and say, do you know what? This is a slightly more advanced topic with version control. We don't need it right now. I'm just going to be mean and skip it.
Sounds good. Sounds good. If you're more curious, you'll definitely find the documentation there.
Somebody asking earlier, I said, hey, when we were looking at the code sandbox stuff before we started, somebody said, well, can I just use this code? And I was like, licenses are the rules about who can use this code. So when we looked at images, we talked about we talked in the lessons about the idea of Creative Commons license for images. And those are saying, and not all Creative Commons licenses are the same, but they're saying, hey, generally they're saying, hey, you can use this if you want, but here are the rules for using it. And licenses are the same thing for code, where you can say, as the person writing this code, you say, hey, I want to attach a license. I want to make the rules for who can reuse my code. Do we want to choose a license?
Let's go ahead and choose
one.
These are
super complex. All right. What you got?
So here we've got, here we can choose the type of license we want to set into our project. And this will automatically create a file called license, which will contain the text, the legalese that goes with
rules,
the rules. Yeah. And we've got a whole bunch of options here. Oh my goodness.
We can do Creative Commons, just like the images we talked about.
Totally.
But it's very rarely used for code, I think.
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop us. Oh gosh, yeah. A license really lets you set the rules for who use your code and what. Because we could say the new public license is sort of a very permissive one, isn't it? Where you're like, hey, do this for effectively whatever you want. Have a nice day. Whereas MIT is like, well, I mean, not for some kinds of commercial use. Don't use this if you want to get paid. And these are all going to look very mysterious, and nerds love to argue about them. If you're like, oh no, what license? It's cool. There are websites that help you pick the right license. I'm a big fan, and I'm biased because I used to work with them. I'm a big fan of just the Mozilla public license, just because it's like, hey, do effectively whatever you want, but like give me a heads up and come and get me if you do something extremely deeply weird.
Shall we go with the Mozilla one?
Or the unlicensed? I haven't seen this in the wild. What does that mean?
The unlicensed. Shall we look it up?
Yeah, let's look it up. What's the unlicensed?
Let's have a look.
And those of you who've never heard this term before, there's a term in tech called bike shedding. And bike shedding is when you set out to do something. Hey, Fabio's absolutely right. It's when you get off track.
Yeah.
And we are absolutely bike shedding. We're like, hey, we're going to show you how to do this. We're going to introduce you to GitHub. Hey, what's this? And bike shedding is when you're like, we are going to build a school. You're like, yeah, let's build the school. Let's, instead of building the school, let's argue about what color to paint the bike shed. And it's when you get off track. So, you know what? The unlicensed looks deeply chaotic. You've got more important things to do than enriching lawyers or imposing petty restrictions on users. It looks like you could just do whatever you want with this. Do we want to unlicense us?
Let's do it.
Who makes the unlicensed? Are they cool? Are they nice? We're just going to assume they're nice. We'll do more research later.
Sounds good. So we've got
TLDRlegal.com. That's licensed, and that's such a good one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and open that. Oh,
wait, no, we're bike shitting. Go back. Go back. Yes.
Yes.
Look at this. We're like an hour in, and we haven't even started this project. Please push create repository. Otherwise, I will take a bus. I can't take a bus to Austria and shake you.
Sounds good. So we have now successfully created our repository. And in fact, you can copy this page. I'm going to just put this into the chat here. It's now live, and anybody can come and take a look at this project. It's licensed. So, according to that, and we can go ahead and start working on it.
We did effectively pick the YOLO license though. So yeah. So we've created a folder, and the only thing in the folder is this file that has the license. That seems all right. Please.
Sorry, I was just going to say, as you can see, it's what GitHub has done by adding this license is automatically created a commit. We'll get more into commits in just a touch.
Well, we had a question earlier, like, what is a commit? A commit is an individual save point. So if you think of the old side scroller video games, every time you hit a save point, that would feel like a commit.
That's an excellent comparison. And now what we can do is take this project and start working on it locally on our computer.
And locally means, so right now where this project lives is on GitHub's computer, on GitHub's server.
That's
and what
right.
we do when we turn it local, and local just seems weird. Hang on, let me move your mic so you can hear me. I'm banging on my computer. Local just means, hey, this is on my physical machine. Usually on my physical machine that I can touch right here. Yeah, you caught me about to lie to you. You'd be like, it means your physical. It usually means on your own machine that you're using to develop from.
Fantastic.
The hard things about technical stuff are there's so many exceptions where you're like, that means your little physical computer. Except when it doesn't.
Yeah, totally. And what we can do is we can start working with this right away by getting access to the code. We've got a question here. Local, that is stored in the computer of the user, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's, I would say, a good, correct me if I'm wrong, 99% of the time.
Almost always, yes.
Almost always, yes.
For where we are right now, you are completely and absolutely correct. That means like 3 or 5 or 10 years from now, when you're like way expert, you're lecturing at universities, you're like, oh wait, Jess and Ramon lied to me. And we did. we lied through abstraction, which is technically correct, is one of the best ways to be correct. And lying through abstraction is one of the best ways, the most loving ways to lie.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're going to want to get a hold of this code right away and start working with it. So what I can do is I can click on this code button, and that gives me a number of options to be able to work with this code.
And we're going to be doing some stuff that feels a little weird. We're going to be working from the command line, which you haven't learned about yet, and it's okay. I'll go ahead and all of the links we've got in here, we'll do. And the command line is just a different way to mess with files and programs on your computer. If any, Ramon, I don't even think you're this old. If any of you used like MS-DOS,
I did.
you're lying
I
to
did.
me. It used to be a way to operate your computer without a sort of a graphic operating. So it's going to be a text-based way to go through files and open things. We're just going to be looking at it now. It's we've got other folks who are very old or have very old computers. Don't worry if this looks super weird. Don't worry if this looks super scary. You don't have to do this to pass the course. We're just previewing it.
Absolutely. And there are wonderful tools out there like the GitHub introduction course that just highlighted to get you more comfortable and familiar. And a lot of this comes with practice as well. So
we're just going to do some scary stuff that looks weird. Feel free to just be like, what? At any point.
Absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and grab this here. And what this is it's the address where my repository lives. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. I'm going to copy it, and that automatically copies it. But there are other ways to do it. You can download a zip file, which is just a file that sort of like compressed and contained all of the other files from my project, which at the moment is just the license. But yes, as Jess said, please do feel free to ask any questions and hop along the way. So what I'm going to do now is change programs to my command line. So I'm going to open that now. Can you all see my command line? I'm not sure if I'm sharing just my browser.
You're just sharing your browser. It's all show. The command line is going to look cool because it looks like hacker scenes in a movie. It's just going to be a bunch of text on, and I think yours is cute colored. Yours is like Easter egg colored, isn't it?
Yeah. Sorry.
You're asking, what's a branch for? And that's such a good question. While you're getting your command line up, a branch is, so when we talked about when somebody wants to make a copy of your code, they fork it. So they've got a fork. Branches are different forks that people are doing different stuff with. And you're like, why are they called forks and branches? Well, they're slightly different, but in effect, a branch is a working version of the code, maybe that someone else has, or maybe you've got multiple different branches open at the same time, but they're just different working versions of the code that are going to, so there's the main version of the code, and then these forks that branch off. Yeah, that's okay. We've got somebody saying that they're lost in the license. One thing I really want to stress is that the licenses aren't important. I mean, they're going to be very important as you continue on your software engineering journey, but don't worry if they sound weird yet. Those are different sets of pre-established rules for what people can do with your code. You don't have to know. And like we were looking at those, we didn't know what most of them meant. You don't have to learn about them now. They're not a big deal now, and they're not going to hurt you if you just ignore them for now. Everything's fine, but stressful.
We've also got a question here. Are we going to download? Are we going to download what now and why? And that's a great question because what we're going to do is we're going to make a local. We're going to work on our project on our computer, and then upload those changes to GitHub, to the internet, so that everybody can take a look at it. Yeah, and what I've done is I've copied this address that you saw here in my browser, and then I've come over to my terminal. We actually have a question mark here. We've actually got a question mark here for being able to find out how to make a copy of our code on my computer. So what you see here is my terminal, which is a program that every computer has. On Windows, it's sometimes called command prompt. On Mac OS, it's called terminal. And I think on different Linux machines, it'll be called variations, terminal, command line, lots of different ways of doing it. And so a couple of things to bear in mind. I've set up my computer already to be able to make these changes, and you will have to install a program called Git to be able to do it. That's that version control tool we were talking about earlier. And in order to be able to make a copy of this project on my computer, I will run a command called git and make a space and follow that with the word clone. And now we're going to be able to paste in that address, as you see here. So git clone the address to my repository. And if I press enter now, what's going to happen is it's going to create a folder on my computer called tribute page free code camp. And it's going to contain my code, which at the moment is only that license file. And in fact, what I'm going to do now, please stop me if I'm going too fast, everybody.
Can we make that a little bigger? So almost all of the text that's happening in, so this, we just want to show you what working in the terminal is going to look like. Most of these, so all of this is going to look mysterious, right?
Yeah.
Remote, enumerate. I'm not even sure what this is trying to mean. This is just to preview what this feels like. Don't worry if we don't know what this means. It's just to say, oh, cool. So when you do, when we start, maybe we come back for a JavaScript module, maybe you learn this on your own. This is just so that when we do start doing things in the command line, way after this whole certification is done, that you say, okay, I'm not afraid. I've seen this before. It's still weird, and I still don't know what's going on. Oh, that's such an interesting question. Yeah.
We've got a question here in the chat that I'm very eager to answer.
So what is this little wiggly tilde and coding?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And what this is, you know how for example, in computers, you can take a look at using a program called Finder or Windows Explorer to take a look at folders in your computer. This is the terminal equivalent of that. So what this is telling me which folder in my computer I'm currently working in. And the tilde denotes my home folder. And then the slash says, okay, sorry.
This is going to feel really similar to websites. We had a question on one of the lesson streams saying, hey, one of the images it linked to, or one of the anchors it linked to was just a slash and contact.html. And I was like, oh, why doesn't that have the whole URL? Why doesn't it have the whole address? And I was like, well, that's because it's within the same domain. And here it's the same idea for folders and say, oh, this is just your home folder. We know it's on the same computer. You don't have to specify it specific. It's like, hey, this is my home folder. And then coding is the subfolder. So it's going to like a file structure again, just like we do in URLs.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to describe it. And so what I can do is work inside So Palak asks, will it change on a different computer? Absolutely. So depending on which folder you're in, what computer you're using, this is going to look a little bit different. I've, for example, given it these sort of pastel colors that I like, and made it look nice for me because I work in the terminal a lot.
Yeah.
And so what I can do is interact with my terminal. I can run commands on it by typing commands in them. For example, here, let me try one. Echo hello.
And again, all of this is, we're just trying to show you that the terminal exists. We're not going to be explicitly teaching on this course just because it's kind of scary and kind of weird.
Yeah.
But we are going to be using it through today's project just to show you how we're going to be updating. So what software is Ramon opening? So depending on what your computer is, this is either going to be the terminal on a Mac operating system or most Linux systems, or this is going to be called called on a Windows machine?
This is called the command prompt.
Command prompt. Yeah. So this is just a different way to access folders and access files on your computer. You don't need to learn this yet, I promise. We just wanted to preview it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So, yes, this is CMD. I've just customized it a little bit so it looks a little bit different. I'm happy to share that sometime of all the things that I've done. But for the scope of today's lesson.
And I know it feels really mean to be like, hey, we're going to briefly show you something that we're not really going to go into a lot. I think when we come back and look at what kinds of supplementary stuff, I was hoping to, I would really love to see if we can come back and teach JavaScript in January. And it was something I was kind of hoping we could. Windows does have another shell.
Yeah, it's
PowerShell.
Yeah.
But I was hoping we could wait and explicitly teach command line later on, just because it's a big blob. Yeah.
I'd love that. Yeah.
So if it's helpful, can we go ahead and we're going to do a weird thing. Can we create a file using the command line?
Absolutely.
Oh, wait, no, we've got to save. Have we already saved this?
You mean created a copy of our project?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, I'm going to use a program called CD to do this. And what it is, it's short for change directory. And it's a way to, it's kind of the equivalent of double clicking on a folder to go into that. So I'm going to type in tribute page free code camp. And
this is why shorter names are better.
Yep. And if I type this in now and I press enter, it's going to take me to that folder. So now I'm living inside that folder. My Finder window has navigated from coding to tribute page free code camp. So what I'm going to do now is open up my project in an editor. I hope I'm not getting too far ahead of myself. So, and I'm going to do that with a program called Visual Studio Code. Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to open that up using Visual Studio Code. And I can do that with the command line, typing in code, and then space, and then a full stop. And what this full stop will tell it is, hey, open up this folder that I'm in right now in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go ahead and press that.
So Visual Studio Code is a separate, program.
Yeah.
So when we're using a sandbox like Free Code Camp, or when we're using a sandbox like Codepen, we're doing our writing and we're seeing the output in the same place. But generally speaking, in the real world, you're going to be using a text editor or an IDE to write your code. And you don't have to use Visual Studio Code. There's a ton of them. I use Sublime Text because it's as close to nothing as you can get. Some people on Windows use Notepad. Yeah, it's a code editor. Heck yeah.
That's right. That's correct. And so what we can do here is already immediately, is it okay to use Vim? I'm a Vim user. Yes, Vim is wonderful.
Don't you recommend beginners use Vim? What are you doing?
I'm sorry.
Vim is a type of, Vim is another way to edit code, or it's but it can be exceptionally challenging.
I apologize.
No, gosh, no. And you're absolutely right. I'm just being mean. But yeah, Vim can be exceptionally challenging. So for folks just starting out, I love to be like, hey, let's try Visual Studio Code, or hey, let's try Atom, which is made by the people at Github, or hey, let's try Sublime. You could try whatever makes you happy. I just bet you money it's not going to be Vim at first.
That's totally fair. Yeah, the great thing is that there are a myriad of options available to you, and it's very common nowadays. It's very common nowadays to use options like Visual Studio, like Sublime Code. Yeah.
I'm just so mean where I was like, oh, hey, let's show you the command line, but not deeply explain it. And then when somebody brings up Venom, I'm like, no, come on, no, let's not be that mean. It can be really challenging for beginners. And it's not just beginners. Every time I see Vim, I just have to go lie down for 10 minutes where I'm like, oh, cool. Look at this. How fun. No.
That's very fair.
But this is, when we see Explore, this is us looking at that folder that we created in GitHub, our big main project, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so we can see here actually this license file and all of its content.
Anyone is free to copy, modify, publish.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and start working on our project right away. Ooh.
Well, we don't have an HTML file. Don't, like earlier, I was saying like, oh, hey, we write our code in files, but there's no HTML file to write our code in. So I don't know what we're supposed to do.
And to get started, we're going to go ahead and add a file. So we're going to click on this button here that says new file, and that'll allow us to create our own file. Now, what would be a good name for our file?
So with websites, your main HTML file, there's a weird convention. So the homepage for it, file one or home,
Oh, I like
these
that.
are really good examples. And I was going to say, unfortunately, there's a weird convention here where the main HTML file for your web page always has the same name. Has anybody heard of what this might be? And I'm going to answer somebody else's question. Well, we're like, so like, what do I call the main HTML? Hey,
There we go.
Look at y'all out here
Ooh,
to
look at
win
them
my
come in.
love. Index.html, index.htm. What's the difference between HTML and HTML?
I don't actually know.
It's just the L. They both work.
I'll go with
we're going to go with
HTML.
HTML because we know that HTML is hypertext markup language.
Perfect. Great. So now we've got an HTML file. And what's really cool about certain editors like Visual Studio Code is that they allow us to work on that HTML and they know what we'll want to work on and make our lives easier towards building that HTML content. So what comes next? I think
we've got the HTML. What else are we going to have?
We're going to have a separate file, won't we?
What's it? Hey, after my own heart. Y'all are, there's no reason for me to be involved in this. Oh, we've got people going in two different directions and they're both right. I love this. Everybody's right. So we do have to declare the doc type in our HTML and that we're going to have to get the page structure. Do we want to do that? Or do we want to add our CSS file? I like to have all our files first.
Totally fair. Let's go ahead and do that. What do we call this one?
What do we call it? Is there? Oh,
Style.css.
Thank you.
What do we call it? Sorry, style.
Styles.css. I love the deep chaos of me forgetting that folks could just yell at us. Y'all are great.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So now we've got both our files. Jess, how would you like to do this? Shall I go ahead and make a commit, or do we want to take our time and
make our first commit? Just like save points in video games, you want to commit as often as you can. You don't know when the next thing you lead is going to be a mini boss. Let's just commit this.
Perfect.
We're going to go into the command line and save this. That's scary, right?
I think so. But we're all in this together. What we've got in Visual Studio Code is the ability to open up the terminal in Visual Studio Code.
What?
Oh yeah, it's a handy dandy tool. And so we can see here, very similar to what we saw before, we've got Visual Studio, we've got the terminal, and the terminal is the equivalent of the command line. This is what I was interacting with before to copy over the files onto my computer from GitHub.
And here, earlier we were talking about the file structure, the folder we were in, and we used to be in the folder tilde, so home / coding. And now we're inside the coding folder, and then we jumped into a subfolder, and now we're in the subfolder for Tribute Page Free Code Camp. And we talked about branches in Git, and we're on the main branch. So that means we're working directly on the main piece of code here, which is reasonably unusual in a real life project. Usually you'd create a separate branch, but it's just us, and I'm very lazy. And of course, the thing you should be doing is creating a set, but like, no, I don't want to. How do we commit this?
Great.
How do we save it?
So our
Just
files
save.
are, yeah. And I want to make that distinction. We've saved the files onto our computer, but what we want to do now is save them onto GitHub. So we will be using the command git again, right? With a space after that. And the first thing I want to do when I'm making a chunk of changes is to take a look at what the current state of everything is. And for that, I like to use the command git status. And I'm going to press enter now, and it's going to show me a result of these are the new files that have been added in: index.html and styles.css. So the next thing I'm going to do is to prepare these to make a commit. This is also known as staging.
This sounds really scary. It's fine.
It is totally fine. This is all happening locally on my computer, and nothing will break on GitHub, and my teammates working on this project with me will know nothing about it. So I will type in the terminal command git and then add. And so this is going to add whatever I type in next to be committed to GitHub.
But I'm very lazy. I don't want to type out all of the individual files.
Yeah.
Is there a way to just like add everything?
Absolutely.
Git add all. Git add stuff. Git add do.
I think you can, there's a couple ways to do this. You can either git add and a full stop to say, add everything that's in this folder.
Is the full stop something we're going to see much more generally? So the full stop in Git usually means everything you can.
Everything in this folder, yes.
Everything in
and the dot means this folder where I am right now, which is the Tribute Page Free Code Camp.
That sounds really reasonable.
So if I press enter now, we're going to see, nothing happened. And if I type in, I love to check my status very often. So I'm going to try git status again. And we're going to see it looks a little bit different now. We're going to see that these are now added for us to create a commit. And next is going to be creating that commit. This is going to be a log of my changes to the project. So if I type in git commit, and you see I'm separating each word with a space. This is very important. Git commit, and now I need to get to write a message for this.
And that's really important because otherwise you've got all these blank save points.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, well, I want to go back to right before I fought the mini boss. If we're still talking about this in a video game time.
Works for me.
But you don't know where that mini boss was. And here you're saying, hey, I want to go back to when I just created these files. So you want to add a message to what this means.
Yeah.
What's a good message for I've just created these files?
And while we do that, we will need to tell Git that we want to add this message. And we'll do that with what's called a flag. That's a dash and the letter M. Let me just expand my folder a little bit so I can have so that y'all can have some more space here. There we go. So we'll say git commit and then -m.
And the
And
dash is
now-
like, hey, and the M is, I've got a message. So, hey, I've got a
I
message.
like that. Exactly. And now we're going to use quote marks to write our message.
Just like we do in HTML when we say, hey,
That's right.
we're going to be, here's a URL, or here's a resource. Here we're going to add those quote marks to say, hey, the message is the content between these quotation marks. So we've seen this in HTML. This feels okay.
Absolutely. So this is where I would ask for some suggestions. What have we done so far in our project that I
We've
want
got
my...
somebody saying hello world might be a good one. I like hello world, but
I love hello
we
world.
want to be a little bit more specific with this and say, hey, what happened? What's happened between this save point and the first save point? And the first save point is just going to say initial commit. So brand new project. So what's happened between the start of the project and this? First files
Ooh,
created.
I like that.
Files created. So we're seeing some stuff that feels pretty salt, pretty yeah. HTML, CSS, start. All of these feel ooh, do you know what? Look at this. I do confess that I write terrible. I write terrible messages myself, but this is beautiful. Created index and styles. I love that. Right?
So we can...
added HTML, CSS, also extremely good. These are all really sound.
Perfect. So I'm going to press enter now. And this is going to create that commit. So if I press enter now, we can see here, created index and files, 2 files changed, some
stuff that sort of happens under the hood.
Yeah.
Create mode, something. I don't know what that, but hey, we created index. And hey, we created that.
And now comes the fun part. Now we're going to push these changes to go live. Now, when I say live, I mean not the website itself, but rather to the project on GitHub. So if I type in the words git push, and that's where we saw that concept of push, then we want to say we want to push this to GitHub, and this is automatically done as a name called origin. And then we want to give the name of the branch. Remember, Jess was talking about branches before. We can see here, like my command line tells me which branch I'm working on at the moment, but you can also see this by typing in git status. If I scroll up just briefly, we can see on branch main, git push origin main. And if I press enter now, let's see what happens. We can see enumerating objects, some jargon here, but here's a cool part. Get to github.com, Ramon H, tribute page freecodecamp.git, main to main. Let's come back to GitHub real quick, if I may, and let's go ahead and refresh my browser.
And for
now look at
folks
that.
who've been, look at that. It exists now. It's got this really good commit message that we saw, created index and styles attached to the new files. But one thing for those of you who are just joining us or have joined us a little bit late, no pressure, everything's fine. We really want to stress that a lot of the stuff we're looking at now, we're previewing skills you won't need in the bootcamp. So we're talking about things like, hey, here's sort of a little bit about how we might use GitHub. Here's a little bit about how the command line works. Here's a little bit about how these files work. And here's what it feels like to use a text editor in the wild. But these, like, if you join us late, or if you're like, oh, this is hard and weird, it's not going to keep you from finishing the boot camp together with us. If you're like, I don't care about this, I don't like this.
That's very fair. So let's go ahead and hop back to Visual Studio Code, because what we can do now is start doing some coding. So I'm going to go ahead and yes.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, we had some really, really good suggestions earlier of what we should do first. And I confess I was mean, where I was like, no, we need to make our CSS file. And we're not going to do anything with that today, right? Like, nah. But if we came back to our HTML file, I saw a couple of folks who were really, really good and smart saying, you need to have a Doctype.
I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller so it doesn't get in my way.
Let's hide her.
Look, I can even hide it. Brilliant. So somebody suggested a Doctype, huh?
Yeah. And this is weirdly something we didn't get explicitly taught. Look at this. Look at this. Look at the wait, go back. Do it again. This is the magic of using some of these text editors, because they're like, hey, I bet I know what you want.
Yep. It's brilliant.
Of course, you all are going to type the whole thing out freehand until you learn them, right?
Fabio's got his working. Congrats.
Oh, amazing. Everything's fine. Look at that. You're exactly where we are as well.
Nice one. Yeah.
So learning about setting the doc type is actually something we don't do unless I'm wrong, isn't something we do in the HTML section of the free Codecamp lessons. We do learn that later on, I think in the applied visual design section. But here, what we're really doing is we're saying, and I like this exclamation where we're saying, hey, this is the document. And we're kind of giving a browser a lot of hints. We'd be like, sup, hey, a browser, we've saved this as an HTML file. So when you get it off the server, you kind of know it's probably good. And setting the doc type is saying, hello, the document is indeed HTML. We told you to expect HTML. This is what it is.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So this is, yeah. I know that, and if a lot of this feels like we're moving too fast, don't worry about it. Like, and that's so easy for me to say, hey, if this is terrifying, don't worry about being terrified. It's okay if this is scary, and this is okay if this is weird. What we just really wanted to do is we wanted to go ahead and preview some of the stuff that you might see in the real world later on. And I especially wanted to preview sort of the concepts of individual files being a part of websites. So, hey, this is in VS Code, or hey, this is in a different text editor. You don't have to worry about that yet. We can come back and we can learn it later. You can learn this later on your own. It's not going to hurt you if this is stuff that doesn't make sense yet. And this is going to sound exceptionally cruel. Like, you all already know that I'm very, very mean. But, and this was especially true for me, a lot of these things felt like way too much when I first saw them. I'd be like, wait, no, you have to go back. I need to understand all of GitHub. Or wait. What's the command line? How can I do it all? And I just said I'm very mean. And now I'm just saying, I promise and trust me. These are going to be things that you continue to come back and touch a little bit. And they're almost always going to feel terrifying. For years, every time I had to open the command line, I was like, oh, this is scary and weird. And it was only coming back and saying, I'm going to do one more tutorial. Oh, I'm going to touch this, or I'm going to do that. It's going to feel less weird. We've got somebody saying, hey, just to confirm, basically all the files, including CSS and HTML, are not saved to our local PC. Is that correct? So it depends. So right now, when you're talking about the things we're building as part of the course, the stuff we're doing on Free Codecamp, none of that has to be saved to your local PC. What we're doing here and saying, hey, we're showing you how to use GitHub, we're showing you how to develop locally. These files are first being saved locally to Ramon's computer. And then when we go through the terminal to say Git and go through the Git staging process and go through Git add and go through Git push, that's taking these files that are already saved on the local computer and pushing them to the GitHub repo. So pushing them to this online folder that has them as well. So all of this is super complicated and super weird, but I promise you don't need any of this for the actual bootcamp. This is just stuff we wanted to preview to say, hey, we're aware that using the Free Codecamp sandbox is abstracting away a lot of really important things. We wanted to preview some of these big, scary concepts, but we wanted to preview them while saying, these are things you're going to have to deal with way, way, way down the line. But right now, we just want to talk about these big concepts. Hey, these are files. Hey, version control exists, and it's a bunch of time travel save points. You won't have to use them yet, and they're going to stay scary for a while. You don't have to come back and touch them again until they feel important. Is that reassuring at all? I feel like we're just being cruel to be cruel. Let's go ahead and let's do a little bit of, because we've got about half an hour. We've just been doing all the scary stuff this whole. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start breaking down some of the. So we're going to do this Doctype thing first, which we haven't learned yet, and it's okay that we haven't learned it yet. Look at me, I'm just so evil. I'm like, Ramon, give us a Doctype.
Let's go ahead. So we'll type in, and again, my code editor will give me suggestions. I like to be. You can totally use the suggestions. I like to be verbose and go ahead and type it out, the whole thing myself. HTML.
And if you do try VS Code, if you do try another text editor, and it doesn't look like this, Ramon, you've done a lot of things to make your VS Code cute, haven't you?
Yes.
So if it looks different, everything's chill.
Yeah, totally. Like you can have different themes, different plugins, and some of these are installed automatically. So what we'll need to do next is start writing some HTML.
Yeah. And everybody, so you all can yell at us voice-wise, or you can yell at us in the chat. What kind of stuff would you like to see?
Yeah.
And we can go back to our requirements here. I think we need to have a title. Where does the title usually sit? Is it within a larger semantic block? Is it within a large element doofer? I believe is the technical term. Doofer is a highly technical term, isn't it? It's not. I think that's a regionalism for thingy. We want to do these in order.
I would love to start from the very beginning. Yeah.
Oh, we've got Nielda, which is just such a beautiful name. I'm terribly jealous of this. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I hope I'm not being. Is saying, hey, y'all, I think you might need a header here.
Yeah.
We want to go ahead and put these like big block concepts thing, like header.
Shall I type?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get header out here. I mean, and if we've got a header, will it automatically close?
Let's have a look.
Oh, look at that.
Now here we've got somebody suggesting head.
Oh, do you know what? I actually don't remember what it is.
And Palak is suggesting HTML. So we got a couple of suggestions here, and I'm gonna, if I may.
Yeah, let's get it at the end. Let's make this happen.
Yeah. We will need
head. It's head, not header, is it?
It is head.
It is head. Excellent. Oh, we get hold on. Check it out. So MDN is actually built into your code editor. I didn't know this. I did not know this.
Header represents introductory content for its nearest ancestor section. Man, this is not good for. I was gonna say not good for native speakers, but like I'm a native speaker and I'm like, what?
Yep.
The header element represents introductory content for its nearest. The first thing is, hold on.
So Vihas is recommending.
People are making a very good point that we declared the Doctype.
Yeah, I think we.
But you had to declare the HTML tag, and then you had to put the head and all the other ones.
Exactly. Well,
and
sorry.
No, like, and you look at us just being total goofballs, and everybody's like, whoa, look at this HTML head. Y'all are just after my own heart. So we do indeed. We've declared the Doctype. We're going to put HTML. We're going to give us some space in there. Look at me, just. We're going to put the head in here.
So what we're doing here is called. I'm just doing something called driving, where I'm just type when I'm told.
Oh, we're just going to boss Ramon around.
Yeah.
I think we should build out the entire structure, right?
Let's go ahead.
So if we've got a head, what does a head sit on top of? That's not a neck. We're going to skip the neck. Ugh, that sounds gross. I'm never doing that again. Absolutely not. So what is the big block, the big sort of semantic conceptual block that comes? So it's going to have a title. This is a good book. The title's going to sit in the head. Y'all after my own heart. Let's get the body in there. So we're going to put the title in the head later. So we've got a head, a body. We could put something down on the bottom if we want. What's the thing that would sit in the bottom?
Below the body?
Footer.
Footer. I love the like deep chaos of like, oh, do we watch the chat? Oh, and like, please do yell at us. There are no wrong answers except for the answers I make, which are always wrong. Does the footer sit in the body?
Yes, because it's part of the body.
Is it? I didn't know.
Yes.
I'm like, look at me being wrong about that. So we had somebody make a really good point where I want to give people credit for these good points. Vihas was like, hey, where's your title? And you said that in a much nicer way than I just said it, but like, hey, where's our title?
That's a great point.
My loves, I'm so lazy. We think we put the title in the head. So before the footer, header caps. So headers in the Fabio after my own heart. So the footer is in the body, but we haven't added main yet. We'll do that in just a second. And what we're doing right now is we're adding the semantic structure. Yeah. And does this feel deeply chaotic? So we've got body, but we haven't added main yet. Shall we add main? I think main, yeah. I think that makes sense. So footer isn't part of the main because it'll have stuff like copyright, bloody. That's not the important stuff. What do we got here? We've got Doctype declared. We've started and finished our HTML tag. And what's really nice about something like VS Code is it's going to magically end your tags that need ending for you. So we've got HTML, we've got head, we've got our title, we've got our body, we've got main and footer. Oh, look at this after my own heart. That's beautiful. But what did we decide we were going to do as our tribute page?
I think the suggestion of pandas came out.
Can we do pandas? Can we do red pandas? No, somebody said the cute chubby babies. Like proper pandas.
There's also the suggestion of capybaras. I'll admit I'm biased and I love capybaras.
You know, nobody can keep us from doing a tribute page. Let's keep it simple. You know what? We're oh gosh, we've got another vote for red pandas. Oh. And this means, Fabio, I see that you've already got your GitHub project started. Do it at the same time as us, but go ahead and do yours as capybaras. Capybaras are cooler anyway.
Guys, so, a question. Can we add an icon or an image on a title?
I don't think so. Let me go ahead and get the MDN up. The title is going to be really important for screen readers to let folks using accessibility and other types of accessibility tech to know what your web page is about. Search engines use it to know what your website's about. I think this is going to be text only, but I'm going to go ahead and get it.
From what I know, Olga, the icon that you see here in your browser, this is what's called a Fav Icon or Fav Icon. I don't actually know how people pronounce it. And what it is, it's an image that you define that shows up in there in your browser, but it's not explicitly a part of the title.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Nilda is asking what the difference between.
Yeah. Oh,
hey there. Love your question. What's the difference between header and head? The head of the HTML file, which you see here, is where we'll define some of the data, some of the invisible. We can actually see if we hover here. The head element represents a collection of metadata for the document. So this is where we're going to do things like the title, which shows up here at the top of the browser. We're going to do things like import things like the author, the style sheets, which we'll see in a bit. That's where that's what the head is. And the header, if I were to just
I got it. I am in MDN myself. Ooh. So some of the issues are that I'm very old, and back in the day, header existed and it filled some of the same purposes as head. And then in HTML5, they were like, hey, head is the appropriate one to use. So everyone yelling, Jess, no, you're wrong. Y'all are absolutely right. You are indeed correct that I am wrong. That head has been shifted to do something different. And this means, and now header is, can we see free Codecamp behind you?
Yes, of course.
So header would be this black bar that you have up at the top. And head would be the data like title that sits within the semantic HTML telling people what the website's about. So now the header is on screen. And it's different. So now the header is something you can see, whereas head is stuff like the title, where it's the information you want it to carry. Thank you very much for appropriately yelling, "No, y'all are wrong," because like so often. And you can have headers for articles as well. So it's really like the visible bit of information that comes. Oh,
Tanya, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Jess. I just love Tanya's comparison here. Header is complementary to footer in a sense. And I think that summarizes it perfectly. Like to every header, there is well, not to everyone, because we see here in Free Code Camp, there isn't, but yes, the header is the top equivalent to the footer, which is at the bottom. That's a great comparison. Thank you.
This is why we get learners who are smarter than us. So our title,
we decided on red pandas, Jess?
I confess we have. It's because I'm a bully. Red panda tribute page. And it is because they are small and cute and good. And so
believe it or not,
saying,
sorry.
Oh, so where should I put header inside the code? Inside body as well? I think
yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
If you think of the body, the header will go above the main. We can't have it. We don't need it here for our project because let's go back a couple steps to our user story number 1. My tribute page should have an element with a corresponding ID main, which contains all other elements. So we'll start with that first user story.
It doesn't say footer. It doesn't say. Do you know what? I'm going to stop you. No. It's a good stop. It's a good stop. I would like to request a save point.
A commit?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Because we've got the structure, right? Do we feel okay about the structure? We've got our Doctype, HTML, head, body. We've got a header. I don't know if we're going to use that header.
I'm going to go ahead and remove it for now. I'll leave it.
that sound is real annoying. I'm so sorry. We've got our main, and we know we need that main. I don't even know if we're going to use that footer, but it's like, what would we call the save point? Ooh, Fabio makes a good point. Well, you don't have to remove it. You can comment it out if you're not sure you need it.
Correct. Let's leave it in for completeness' sake now. Actually, one thing I love to do before going to a commit, just to give myself a little bit of a reward, if I may, Jess.
Yeah.
Is to look at that page.
Nice. Let's look at the page.
Yeah.
We should prepare people though, because like, what do you think this page is going to look like?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I believe
it's going to look white because we haven't had anything.
Well, I want to be kind of annoying, if I may, and just say like it's almost blank. There's actually a tiny bit of content that we're going to see.
Oh, the title.
That's right. Nice one. So if I go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and open with. Actually, I have no idea how to do this. Can I do it? Firefox? Excuse me for 1 second while I try and figure out how to open this. I think if I do here, I'm just gonna quickly unshare my screen for
you have a button on Visual Studio Code that says go live. You can put it there
at the bottom.
Yeah, I think it is next to HTML.
Oh yeah,
I think it is that one or the other one.
Line sequence. This is tweet feedback. No notifications. All
right. Oh, weird. I have it on my computer like that.
Open timeline. Open to the side. Nope.
Oh, chill. Let's go ahead. Let's unshare and give you a second.
Yeah. Sorry, just a second, folks.
Also, this means we can see lots of y'all's cute faces.
Hey.
I love how everybody's like, oh, I am cute. A lot of pressure, isn't it?
So let me I think I've got it here.
Everything's fine and everything's going to be fine.
Totally.
You can copy the path if you right click.
Paste
on the browser.
Ooh, I like that. Here, I'll go ahead and reshare my screen. I think I figured out a way that works for me. And that is that I've right-clicked on the file and then reveal in Explorer. And what that does is it opens it in my computer. You can see here we've got it. I'm sorry, I don't know how to make this bigger. But it says index.html there. And that's a file that I can go ahead and open in my browser.
Do it.
So if I double click on it, here we are. Now, as everybody correctly said, it is a blank page, but almost, because if you take a look there at the very top of the window, we can see the title, Red Panda Tribute Page.
We could see the title, but like you got like 97 tabs open.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Big. So what a fantastically exciting letdown where we're like, oh, we can see our page. There's not much yet. Okay. But we've got a couple minutes yet. What if we go ahead and let's go through the commit process again, but let's go a little bit faster. So we'll
Sure
talk
thing.
about it as we go. We just want to go ahead and say, hey, this is weird. It's going to keep feeling weird, but it's going to feel a little bit less weird every time we try this.
Totally. So we'll do the same commands again. We'll do a git status. We can see here we've modified the index.html file. So I'm going to go ahead and do that git add again with the full stop to add every file here. And next we're going to do that commit. So we're going to git commit -m to write our message.
What do we want to call it?
Yeah, what did we do here? Any suggestions?
Setting our HTML file.
Yeah.
Our HTML file. How's that?
I feel good.
Fantastic. Let's go ahead
I like
and
doing this in Zoom. It keeps me lazy where I'm like, I know y'all can yell at me. What do we do after this? We commit, and then it was we shove it, isn't it? We shove it into.
We git push origin and main.
So we're on the main branch.
Oh, sorry, I went a little too fast.
Pushing it. No. We're pushing it all, pushing all that code we've just added and just commented. We're pushing that up into our GitHub. And now if we come over to the GitHub website, again, the repo here, and we've got to refresh it again. I love that 34 seconds ago. And if we click that, it should show us all of this beautiful stuff that y'all really have written, not me.
And it's all there.
We'll go ahead and do. So if we only want to commit HTML, the command is git.index. So if you only wanted to commit a specific file, you could just say git commit, and it's not a full stop between it. So you would just say git add index.html.
Sorry, I need to make my window a little bit larger so that y'all can see it in one line. And there you go. Git add index.html would be the way to do it if you wanted to only commit that HTML. So I'm going to go ahead and
patient with me being sneezy and allergic to everything. I'm so sorry.
All fine. Bless you, Jess. Let's go ahead and get that first user story passing, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's get 1/10, 1/9. What's that first one? My tribute page should have an element with an ID corresponding made.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, and this is going to feel weird, I feel like we just need to add the ID to main.
I feel so too.
But that means we should get rid of header, right? Because like all of the other elements should be within main.
Correct. So let's go ahead.
Our favorite thing to do.
Delete code. One thing you'll learn in your career is that us programmers love to delete code.
So having a header and footer would have been a really cool idea, but our user story, our requirements say all of your content on this page needs to be hanging out in main.
So let's do just that then. We'll add a space here and we'll add ID equals.
Capybaras are great.
Capybaras are amazing. ID equals main.
Yeah.
And because that's done, we can actually go ahead and refresh our page here in the browser. We're probably not going to see much of a difference because we haven't actually added any content.
This is click on the inspect element and you can see that it changed.
Oh, yes. Let's do that.
And this is really fun. This is like spy stuff for websites. You can see a lot of what's going on. And this is saying, hey, This is what the HTML file you're looking at looks like under the hood.
Totally.
Olga, you are just absolutely fantastic at this. It's unreasonable to be so good.
And there we, as Olga correctly said, we can see that our main element has the ID of Maine. So in a way, we've passed our first user story, and we're just going to quickly make a commit to do that. So let's go ahead and git status.
We're going to do it real fast this time.
Git
add
dot. Git commit. And now for the message, I love to be more specific about what we've done here. And what we've done is we've, in a way, I'd love to make it conducive to what we did for the project, towards the project.
So saying something like user story 1 passed, or just user story 1.
Brilliant. And there it is. We git push origin main, and that's live on GitHub.
There we go. And see, this is super freaky the first time you see this, and getting a little bit more like, oh, hey, git status, git add, git commit, message, git push. Like that sort of flow starts to feel a little bit less terrifying. Of course, computers are still scary. And of course, everything is a dangerous mistake waiting to happen. But with version control, it's a dangerous mistake that you could just go back in time on. If you can break something so completely that Git cannot send you back in time, I will send you some glitter stickers. I mean, and like, yes, it's like, oh, I didn't commit, and then I lost all my work. I'd be like, no, you don't get a glitter sticker for that. I do that all the time. So we're going to actually go ahead and head off in about 10 minutes. I wanted to take a little bit of time and answer people's questions, and just one more time reassure you. So say, this isn't a core, and this like, so we're probably not going to do this every Saturday because y'all are busy people and you don't want to hang out with us on a Saturday. Whoa. Unless you find that Saturday sessions are significantly better for you. So please, you are never being rude. You are never being demanding. Give me as much feedback as you want. Say, oh, I wish this boot camp was faster. I wish this boot camp was slower. I wish we had more live sessions. I don't care about the live sessions. I don't use. So you can message me privately. You can email. You can ask general questions. Of course, my love. But you're never being rude by giving feedback. I won't be able to automatically give everybody what they want in this one. But the more feedback y'all give me, the more, at the very least, we can make it work better for folks in the future. That's general questions. Or we can go ahead and take a look at lessons from Free Code Camp if you want to take a look.
I'll be happy to stop sharing my screen now then.
Everything's fine. Oh, come on again, y'all. Oh. Any questions about anything at all? Okay, so Saturdays are useful for you. Katie, we do have lessons during the week, but they're always recorded and they always live on YouTube. And it's just me talking to myself. That's very boring. It tends to be woofing. But if folks don't have questions, we are all gonna. Ooh. Oh!
I'm here. I'm still here.
You're fine. I really like this. Okay, so we're saying, hey, I need more help with Git and command line. Graham, I'm gonna get to your question just for a second. So this is just a little bit of taster. This is just a, hey, Git exists. Hey, the command line exists. You don't have to start using it right away. And we'll go ahead and we'll share to the forum, hey, here's this course. We'll go ahead and make this video available. So this is stuff, if you want to come back and touch it a little bit more, you can't, but it's just a preview. You don't have to do this right away, and you don't have to do it at all during this. If you want to see the video after the session, the Class Central YouTube channel, which I'm going to go ahead and get right now, we'll have this, if it's not lazy, is it if later today or tomorrow? And the reason it's going to be that is I'm gonna go hang out with my friends.
Lovely. Well deserved.
Hello, Jess. If I want to code directly on GitHub, can I do that, or do I need to use a local?
You can. So it is possible to edit files right on GitHub. Ramon, can you show us how while I answer this other question from Graham that I've lost?
Totally.
Graham, are no-code websites like Wix a danger to web developers' jobs? I don't think so. Like, these have existed for a long time. Web developers still exist. I really like them because they can be really easy for folks to get their stuff up. We had a session on Wednesday from Bruce Lawson, who's been doing stuff on the web for, I was going to say longer than I've been around, but we're both very old. And he actually did some work with Wix, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm not worried about this." And my general rule is that if other old folks aren't worried, I'm not worried. And I promise the next time we do a session, I will not have been petting cats, and I will not be super allergic to everything.
So as you could, sorry. As you can see here, I've made some changes. These aren't saved yet, right up until I press commit changes, just like I've been doing, like, this message that I was adding on the command line, like it's not going to happen up until I press commit changes.
So I want to say something really important here, because Beryl asked a question earlier that was fantastic to say,
sure.
Are you saving these changes on your computer? Are you saving these files on your computer? Or are you saving them on GitHub in the cloud? And this is going to be really exciting because the files on our computer and the files on GitHub are going to diverge now. They're going to be different now. This change and this commit, the save point you're making, are going to only be in the files on GitHub. When we come back and look at the files on your local computer, we're going to need to update them and sync them to make them be the same again. I just wanted to point out that was... Oh, please.
So I should pick, for example, I'm going to use it locally or I'm going to do it directly on GitHub. I need to decide. Otherwise, I'm going to have to sync all the time.
You'll have to sync all the time anyway once you're working with other people. So we got a couple of minutes yet. Can you save this and then can you show us in the command line how you'd sync those? It's not a big deal to sync those. Those are just, it's not a big, of course they feel scary and weird, but we're going to commit these changes and then we're going to see how you can down more code.
Exactly. So this is, now that this change has been done live on GitHub, if I come back to I've got the file open here on my browser. If I were to refresh that, you might think that we would expect to see that header, but it's not because we haven't synchronized the code on our computer, which is why I would need to come back here.
So just to specify really fast, when you open this HTML file on your computer, it's opening the local file. It's opening the file that's saved to your computer, not the GitHub one.
Thank you. Yes. And so if I take a look back here on Visual Studio Code, you'll see that the header is not there yet. And that's because I need to actually synchronize it using a command, using the git command, the opposite of push, which would be pull. So we'll type in git pull origin main, and that will pull the page changes down. And look at that, it updated automatically in Visual Studio Code. So now that's up to date. Yeah, cool. I see the clapping. Love it. Yay. Nice. Awesome. Yeah. So that's how, and this is, as Jess was saying, like once you start working collaboratively with other people on the internet, or on Teams, you're gonna need to be doing these pulls just to make sure that you're up to date with their changes as well. Yeah. So I hope that answers that.
So if you're going to be looking for where can I find this video later with all of my sniffling, it's going to be on the Class Central YouTube. We'll go ahead and put that up in a bit. We've got folks saying, oh, hey, a Discord would be really cool. There is one in the forums. I really want to specify that is made by another learner. So that's not moderated by the team. And we would love to have a Discord later on. It's just one of those things where we've got over 7,000 learners total. And I love y'all, and y'all have been super responsible, and you're just far and away one of the best communities I've gotten to learn with. But one thing I'm really concerned about is just the real-time nature of that, making sure that we can moderate that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to turn folks loose in a space that I can't tightly moderate because I'm a mean old lady. We're going to have the exact same issues with stuff like Telegram, just stuff that's synchronous and go ahead and let me get a little bit more time, a little bit more confidence around moderation of the scale, and then we'll take a look at stuff around this. This Saturday session was completely optional. This isn't going to be stuff that you need to do to pass this. And I'll throw this up on YouTube in just a second. As always, we're in the forums. You can email bootcamp@classcentral.com if you want to have something. Oh, I've got something personal I want to chat to you about. Or you can message me on the forums anytime. I'm going to let y'all ideally go and wait, I can boss you around. It might be tempted to be like, oh, it's Saturday. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to study. No. We learned from Barbara Oakley last week that you need to interleaven. You need to alternate learning and chilling. Y'all are going to log off and chill, right? Yeah, we've got some very unconvincing, like, oh yeah, I'm. Some of y'all are lying to me, and I appreciate it. I'm going to let you go. Please have the easiest Saturday. Lie to me about how you're going to go relax. I'll see many of you on the live streams Monday and Tuesday. But don't worry.
Is that all?
That's all. Come on, it's Saturday. You all have to go play or else.
I was excited about everything. So
you could. I'm not the boss of you. Y'all can keep studying if you want to. I'm going to let you go.
Yes, and Ramon, relax as well and have a great Saturday.
Oh, same to you.
So
thank you.
But for real, go chill. Don't just study. I'm going to hang up on everyone at the same time. Ramon is in the forum as well. I'm not in the free code camp one, in the Class Central one, I understand. All right. I am going to be incredibly unkind. I'm going to push this button and then it'll make all of you go outside. In so much as I can. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you for everything. Have a
Take
nice
care,
Saturday.
Bye.